Tonight, chilling new details in the shootings of two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. Lawmakers are calling this a targeted attack, saying the killer, now in custody, stalked his victims like prey and had a hit list of 45 officials. Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan joins us. And breaking news, President Trump leaves the G7 early, instructing his national security team to gather in the Situation Room, canceling his planned meetings with the presidents of Ukraine and Mexico. Our Rachel Scott has the details. As Israel and Iran trade missiles, ABC's Jonathan Karl goes one-on-one with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Is Israel targeting Iran's supreme leader? ICE protests over the weekend as thousands gathered across the country, including 50,000 people in Los Angeles and 20,000 in New York, while the president calls for expanded immigration enforcement. Senator Ted Cruz joins us to weigh in on the federal government's new efforts. Imagine yourself hospitalized, needing surgery without a doctor in sight. But what if no surgeon, no problem? We have an exclusive look at the very first FDA-approved human trial testing robotic telesurgery. We show you a doctor in Orlando, Florida, who just removed prostate cancer from a patient in the African country of Angola. And the most visited museum in the world closed without warning. Thousands of visitors stranded outside its doors waiting for a chance to see the Mona Lisa. What caused this surprise shutdown, and when will the Louvre reopen?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with breaking news. President Trump is leaving the G7 summit in Canada one day early as tensions between Israel and Iran ratchet up in the Middle East. And tonight, ABC News has learned the president has instructed his team to be ready in the Situation Room. It would seem to be a long night ahead in the White House and for top national security officials. This comes hours after ABC News learned the president did not intend to sign a statement being drafted at the summit calling for de-escalation between Israel and Iran. Today, Israel targeted Iran's state TV while they were on the air, and Iran struck apartment buildings in Tel Aviv where multiple civilians died. President Trump said this right before he was scheduled to leave the G7 as the leaders took their group photo.
Well, I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. You did a fantastic job. Thank you in Canada. But you probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can.
Let's bring in our Rachel Scott, who's in Canada attending that G7 tonight with the president. Rachel, this was quite sudden. You've been making calls the past hour or so. Bring us up to speed with what you're learning about why exactly he's left.
Yeah, Linsey, this was really unexpected. The G7 summit is already short as it is, and now we had this sudden news from the president revealing that he's going to be leaving the G7 summit early, that he's going to be heading back to the White House this evening. I am told that he is wrapping up a state dinner, essentially, with all the other world leaders, taking that family photo that we traditionally see with the G7 leaders, and then he's going to be boarding Air Force One and heading back to the White House this evening. The White House press secretary says this ultimately goes back to the conflict in the Middle East, and that the president is going to be focused on that, and that he needs to return back to the White House. As we have reported, according to sources, we are told that the president has also instructed his national security team to be ready in the Situation Room as he travels back and makes his way back to the White House. And so at this point, what we do know is that the president is leaving early, that the White House is saying that it's so that he can focus on the conflict that is emerging in the Middle East and between Iran and Israel. And at this point, we don't have any other further details about what exactly is going on here, Linsey, as we continue to make calls.
What is the White House saying specifically about the U.S. and its posture in the Middle East right now?
We know that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, just gave an interview where he talked about the posture in the Middle East. And I want to read to you exactly what he said. He said that President Trump would still like to see Iran sign this nuclear deal. But he also said that the U.S. is postured defensively in the region to be strong in pursuit of a peace deal, but also to defend American assets as well. He said, we are strong, we're prepared, we're defensive, and we're present. We are postured defensively in the region to be strong in the pursuit of peace. So that's coming from the Secretary of Defense tonight, and that's the message that he is sending. The White House pointing us back to the statements from the Secretary of Defense as well. But Linsey, I will tell you this. The president has been very closely monitoring what is happening between Israel and Iran. I know that he has been speaking directly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I had an opportunity to speak with the president over the weekend by phone on Sunday, and he told me that he is very much read in on what has been happening and that he wanted Iran to come to the table to make an agreement when it came to not having a nuclear weapon. But ultimately, those talks had been called off. The president told me he was hoping that this would force them to the table, these ongoing strikes that Israel is carrying out on Iran, that force them to the table to make an agreement. But we have seen this really escalate here. And ultimately now the president leaving the G7 summit so early, heading back to the White House to focus on what is unfolding in the Middle East, Linsey.
Yeah, quite an escalation in the past few days. Rachel Scott, we thank you so much for your reporting. Earlier tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking from an undisclosed location in Israel, issuing a chilling warning to the U.S. if President Trump does not step in to help defeat Iran. Our Jonathan Karl has this ABC News exclusive.
Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told me Israel won't rule out an attempt to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei.
Are you going to target the supreme leader?
Look, we're doing what we need to do. I'm not going to get into the details, but we've targeted their top nuclear scientists. It's basically Hitler's nuclear team. You know, we got them. We still have work to do on other sites. We have targeted their ballistic missile manufacturing facilities.
U.S. officials tell ABC News President Trump had rejected an Israeli plan to attack the supreme leader.
Do you understand his concern? My understanding is his concern is that this would escalate the conflict beyond where it is already.
It's not going to escalate the conflict. It's going to end the conflict. We've had half a century of conflict spread by this regime that terrorizes everyone in the Middle East, has bombed the Aramco oil fields in Saudi Arabia, is spreading terrorism and subversion and sabotage everywhere. That's the forever war is what Iran wants. And they're bringing us to the brink of nuclear war. In fact, what Israel is doing is preventing this, bringing an end to this aggression.
Netanyahu insisted Iran is a threat not just to Israel, but to the United States as well.
Today it's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil.
Our thanks to Jonathan Karl. Next to that horrific targeted attack on two Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses. Tonight, prosecutors are calling the shootings a political assassination. Former Minnesota House Speaker Democrat Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were both killed. State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette wounded in the attacks. Both couples shot at their homes. New court documents say that the suspect, posing as a police officer, visited a total of 4 homes early Saturday morning. The search for him launched the largest manhunt in Minnesota state history. After nearly 2 days on the run last night, 57-year-old Vance Bolter was tracked to this remote spot near his home. He surrendered and is facing state and federal charges. Representative Hortman's children, Sophie and Colin, released a statement tonight saying in part, "We are devastated and heartbroken at the loss of our parents, Melissa and Mark. They were the bright lights at the center of our lives, and we can't believe they're gone. Their love for us was boundless. We miss them so much. This tragedy must become a moment for us to come together." We're standing by to hear from a close friend of Hortman's, Minnesota's lieutenant governor. But first, Faith Abube is in Minneapolis tonight tracking all these developments.
Tonight, authorities calling this man, Vance Bolter, a cold-blooded killer after he allegedly stalked, surveilled, and shot 2 longtime Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses, triggering the largest manhunt in state history.
It is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares. Bolter stalked his victims like prey.
Bolter appearing before a judge today where prosecutors revealed chilling new details of a, quote, targeted political assassination designed to inflict fear, injure, and kill members of the Minnesota legislature and their families.
This was a targeted attack against individuals who answered the call to public service.
Court documents say the 57-year-old husband and father started his alleged murderous rampage around 2 a.m., disguised as a police officer and heavily armed with firearms and body armor. Boulter also wearing what authorities call a hyper-realistic mask made of latex, driving an SUV decked out in emergency lights and a license plate that read police. Investigators say this is Boulter banging on the door of Democrat State Senator John Hoffman, shouting, "Police, open up." The senator and his wife realizing he was an imposter.
When Senator Hoffman attempted to push Belter out and stop him from entering his home, Belter shot him repeatedly.
Their front door riddled with bullets, the senator's daughter calling 911, setting off the massive manhunt. Boulter allegedly driving to the home of another elected official. Investigators say this surveillance shows him at the door, that lawmaker not home. Boulter then allegedly driving to his third target 5 miles away, where court documents say an officer saw Boulter in his car while conducting a wellness check on the state senator who lived there and believed that the SUV was in fact a law enforcement officer. By the time backup arrived, Boulter had left the scene. Officials say around 3:30 a.m., Boulter heading to his fourth stop, the home of former Minnesota House Speaker, Democrat Melissa Hortman. Officers were also there doing a wellness check. A neighbor capturing the showdown from her window as Boulter allegedly fired several rounds at police, forcing himself into the home.
He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband, Mark.
Police say Boulter escaped on foot. Authorities tonight sharing what they found inside that car. Assault-style rifles, several rounds of ammunition, and a medical kit suggesting Boulter may have planned to be on the run for a while.
Belter also had in his car notebooks containing a list of more than 45 Minnesota state and federal elected officials, including Representative Hortman.
Authorities tonight say Boulter extensively planned his rampage for months, including making lists like this one, identifying several websites that allow users to search for home addresses and family member names. Boulter captured late Sunday, just an hour from the crime scene and roughly a mile from his home, spotted earlier by an officer and on this trail camera obtained by our affiliate KSTP.
We have an arrest warrant.
Police using a loudspeaker ordering him to surrender.
Stand up with your hands in.
Faith, thank you. Representative Melissa Hortman was a member of the state legislature for 2 decades and became the 61st Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives in 2019. Here to discuss her work and legacy is Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Lieutenant Governor, we just thank you so much for your time. So sorry for your loss. Representative Hortman has been described as a confidant, a mentor, and companion, as a hard-working, problem-solving leader who managed to negotiate her way through impasses. Just curious how you'd describe her.
I mean, I would certainly use all of those words to describe Melissa Hortman. But what I would also say is that she was an incredibly good friend. She was just an incredible public servant and cared tremendously about getting good results for Minnesotans. You know, she oftentimes said she didn't have a lot of time for political stuff. She didn't use the word stuff, but showed that she really cared about doing the work and had a tremendous influence on so many people all throughout the state. And I am grateful that more people across the country out of this tragedy are getting to know Speaker Hortman, and she will leave a tremendous legacy for folks who didn't even know her in the legislative accomplishments that we were able to secure together. Paid family and medical leave, child care investments, feeding kids across the state of Minnesota, all of those pieces, will leave a lasting impact on the lives of Minnesotans. And she was just incredible.
As you just mentioned, Representative Hortman presided over several marquee legislative wins for Democrats in 2023 when the party had a 1-seat majority. What issues would you say she was most passionate about?
Well, she cared tremendously about sustainability, about clean energy, and she was really a policy nerd, and that is one of my favorite things about her. And I also know she really cared a lot about her family and her kids and Mark, her dog Gilbert, and was a gardener. One of my favorite things to do was to catch up with her over, chips and margaritas, and we would talk about what it meant to be raising girls in this moment. And she was really something.
You mentioned her family. We know that Representative Hortman and her husband leave behind 2 children. Any word on how they're doing?
I mean, as you can imagine, losing both of their parents in this tragedy. First Father's Day, immediately following the loss of both of their parents. We are all just going to do whatever we can to support them through this incredibly difficult moment. And I would say, to remember just the human part of this, right? Elected officials are people with people in their lives who love them. And so as we are seeing this, of course, through the lens of just a terrible, political violence, they also just have lost the people who are most important to them in their lives. And so keeping that human lens on this and just the core of people's humanity in this moment, I think is also really important.
Violent threats against lawmakers, as you know, hit a record high last year for the 2nd year in a row. What can be done to stop this and protect those who serve us?
Well, it's pretty clear that we all, every elected official of every stripe and party has to turn down the temperature. I was so grateful that the congressional delegation from Minnesota, Democrats and Republicans, released a joint statement. That should be how we are approaching this in this moment.
And just to end on that note with regard to humanizing, you talked about how you all would meet for chips and margaritas. Curious if you just have any anecdotes, any small little story or favorite memory of her that you might be able to share with us.
Well, I would say this, as a member of the Minnesota House, and being under her leadership, there's a moment about a decade or so ago that went very viral when many of the people who are part of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, women, were speaking on the floor, and there was sort of an infamous card game that was happening in the members' retirement room, and Minority Leader Hortman at the time, got up and called it out. She said, there are these women who are giving these really important speeches on the floor, and there's a card game being played in the back. The next day, some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle were pretty upset about it, and they asked her to apologize. And she said that she would not, and very matter-of-factly, and she absolutely had our back. And so I watched her that day just show me what it meant to be in leadership, to have the backs of your members, to just tell the truth and to stand in it. And she had our back, and we in turn then had her back in that moment. And I will always be grateful for that. And as a new member who came in the middle of a biennium, she took me under her wing and became a mentor and a friend. And there are countless people who have similar stories to mine, and I will just miss her tremendously.
Well, we thank you so much for sharing your time and a bit about your friend, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next tonight, to the deadly flash flood threat. 12 million Americans are on alert from Missouri to Pennsylvania to North Carolina. Near Wheeling, West Virginia, 4 inches of rain in a half hour. At least 6 people have died there. In Fairmont, West Virginia, families race to escape this apartment building. Floodwaters ripping it apart. We'll time the new flash flood threat out in a moment. But first, our Alex Perez is in Fairmont, West Virginia, where there's floodwaters race through. Alex.
Hey, Lindsay, it's been a rough start to the week for so many here in West Virginia. I want you to take a look behind me here. Those vicious floodwaters completely blowing the wall completely off of this apartment building behind me here. In some areas, they got up to 4 inches of rain in just half an hour. Tonight, families from West Virginia to the Carolinas on alert for more floods that have already killed at least 6 people and brought horrifying scenes like this. A flash flood emergency in Fairmont, West Virginia, raging waters tearing through this apartment building. Holy. Mother of 4, Tiffany Martin, says the building started collapsing as she raced to get out. How lucky do you feel to be here right now?
So lucky. I'm here for a reason, clearly, and it's my children.
The back wall gone, water cascading off the roof. Thankfully, everyone got out okay. But in Ohio County, West Virginia, authorities say at least 6 people have died since the storms began there Saturday. Up to 4 inches of rain falling in half an hour, leaving Logan and Jenna Pickens little time to get out of their home.
The water was already halfway up my truck, so we didn't have any time to grab anything. I mean, we have no clothes, no nothing.
And Lindsay, this community is still on high alert. There's a flood watch for nearly the entire state through tonight as the area braces for more rain. Lindsay?
Venture's still. Alex, our thanks to you. Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg of our New York station WABC joins us now, tracking it all. Hey, Lee.
Hey, Lindsay. Still a stalled front here over the mid-Atlantic, extending back into parts of Missouri. We've got waves of rain for the next few days over flood-ravaged West Virginia. I think we have this flood watch, which will last into tonight and tomorrow. And locally, 5 inches of rain can fall from Charleston to Roanoke over to Raleigh. How about the severe zone? There's a second front, a cold front. That's really going to change the pattern for the East Coast to get some summery weather back into the Northeast by the weekend, but it's producing severe weather, active tornado warnings. There was a multi-vortex tornado northwest of Brainerd. Could be a dangerous night in Minneapolis. Now, this is a slow-moving front, so the way the storms basically just creep south into parts of the plains tomorrow, Wichita to Kansas City in the storm zone tomorrow, very destructive winds and possible tornadoes, and then that moves eastward. So on Wednesday, we're looking at Oklahoma City, up to Chicago, in Detroit. By the time we get to Thursday, it's Charlotte to D.C. to right here in New York, and then finally a nice summer weekend here in the Northeast. Lindsay?
Oh, we have earned it, I think.
Indeed.
All right, Lee, thanks so much. We've learned the defense for Sean Diddy Combs will put on a case after the prosecution rests later this week. The defense signaled its plans to call as many as 3 witnesses, possibly more. Today, the jury saw messages from Combs' employees about the so-called freak-offs and also texts and emails pulled from one of Combs' devices in which he discussed travel arrangements for a male escort. A new juror is also now in place. The male alternate is a 57-year-old architect active in Boy Scouts who makes the jury slightly older, whiter, and less urban. Yet another outage was reported at Newark Liberty Airport. This time, a 1-second outage forced air traffic controllers to delay at least one departure on Sunday. In audio obtained by ABC News, the air traffic controller could be heard saying that there was an equipment failure and they were holding the aircraft. The FAA said it's investigating this incident. This is the latest in a series of equipment and staffing issues that have plagued the airport now for months. Coming up, the Trump family is ringing up a new venture. Still ahead, details of the Trump mobile plan and the gold-plated phone up for grabs. But first, it's been days of protest. Americans across the country marching against recent ICE raids. This as the president says he will expand efforts to deport undocumented migrants in America's largest cities. Senator Ted Cruz talks to us about the administration's plan. Welcome back, everyone. Millions of people turned out across the country on Saturday to protest the ongoing ICE raids that have been taking place in cities and towns since right after President Trump was sworn into office. We'll break down those protests in tonight's By the Numbers. By most estimates, there were between 1,500 and 2,000 different protests on Saturday in all 50 states, many of them labeled No King's Day. Protests as counter-programming to the military parade in Washington, D.C., honoring the Army's 250 years of service on the same day as President Trump's birthday. Anywhere between 4 to 6 million Americans turned out to protest, which possibly made it the largest single day of protest in American history. More protesters showed up in Los Angeles than in any other city. About 200,000 people fanned out across the City of Angels, according to organizers. There were few reports of violence across the country, but Republican governors in 4 states, they were not taking any chances. In Virginia, Texas, Nebraska, and Missouri, National Guard troops were mobilized to help law enforcement manage demonstrations. As for the ICE apprehensions, which spawned these protests, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller recently called for a minimum of 3,000 arrests per day. The original target was 1,000. Going back to the protests in Los Angeles for a moment, there have been 575 arrests there since June 7th, but none last night, according to the LAPD. Joining us now for more is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, thank you so much for taking the time. Once again, always great to have you on the show. We have a lot going on, so we'll get right to it. The president has said that he will expand efforts to deport undocumented migrants in America's largest cities, specifically singled out Chicago and New York in addition to Los Angeles. He has also said that his focus would be violent criminals. So why then has the scope broadened to include nonviolent criminals?
Well, listen, the president is committed to enforcing our immigration laws. And if you look at the election we had in November, I think there was a very clear mandate from the voters across the board. But the clearest mandate was to secure the border. After 4 years of open borders, after 12 million illegal immigrants flooding into this country, and sadly, that was a deliberate decision by Joe Biden and the Democrats, the American people were fed up. Now, the President Trump also, quite rightly, is prioritizing violent criminals. He's going after murderers and rapists and child molesters and violent Venezuelan gang members. I think that is obviously where the priority should lie, and that's where ICE is focusing their enforcement efforts.
Why not strictly focus on the criminals?
Because every illegal immigrant is a criminal. Crossing into this country illegally is against the law. That makes you a criminal. And there is a bizarre view among Democrats and the media that illegal immigration is just fine. It's not a crime. In fact, if you remember the Democrat presidential primary last time around, where every one of them raised their hand and said they wanted to legalize illegal immigration. I don't think that's right. And I say that, Linsey, I'm the son of an immigrant. My father came from Cuba in 1957, but he came legally. There's a right way to come to this country. You stand in line, you follow the rules, and I believe we should enforce those rules and secure our border. And so you support President Trump sending in the National Guard? I think that President Trump sent in the National Guard because you had Democrat mayors and Democrat governors who refused to enforce the law. You look at the L.A. riots, where the Democrats agreed with the rioters, and they didn't protect American citizens. They didn't protect store owners whose stores were looted, people who were physically assaulted. And sadly, Linsey, what we saw was a reprise of what we saw during the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots, where Democrat mayors and governors, again, agreed with the violent rioters, refused to protect people's safety, stood by while police cars were firebombed, while violence was carried out. And President Trump, quite rightly, is saying we're not going to allow violence. We're not going to allow people's safety to be threatened. And if the local officials, the elected officials, won't protect your safety, then the federal government has a responsibility to do so. President Trump has told ICE to pause, as you know, raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants. Do you support those raids being paused? Listen, I think what the president has done is rightly said that we're going to prioritize first violent criminals, those who pose a serious public safety threat. I think that makes sense in terms of prioritizing enforcement. Look, every illegal immigrant who is taking a job, they are taking a job of an American citizen or a legal immigrant, and they're driving down wages. And so it's one of the reasons that blue-collar workers have been hammered under Democrat administrations, because when you let 12 million people in, they lower the wages for millions of working Americans. So I think we need to enforce our law across the board, but there's no doubt that it makes sense to put as the first priority removing violent criminals, the murderers and rapists and the gang members.
But as you know, there have been a number of large corporations who have lobbied specifically to the president saying, hey, this is bad for business. This is going to cause the costs to go up at grocery stores and our hotels. And so, as you said to me just a little bit ago, if all of them are truly criminals, then why say, OK, but we will do it for the benefit of these large CEOs?
Look, I agree that big business often gets in bed with big government. It's one of the reasons the American people elected Donald Trump, is they were frustrated with big business that wanted illegal immigration for cheap labor. And one of the most significant shifts in the last decade politically is the Republican Party has become a blue-collar party. We are the party of working men and women, and those are often the people that get hurt by massive illegal immigration.
I want to turn to the conflict between Iran and Israel. On your podcast, The Verdict with Ted Cruz, you pose the question many are asking you, is this World War III? You say no. ABC News has reported President Trump rejected Israel's plan to kill Iran's supreme leader. Is there concern, if Israel eventually does try to do that, or is perhaps successful, that the world could be on the road to World War III?
Listen, this is not World War III. And by the way, Iran has been trying to wage World War III for the entire existence ever since the Islamic Revolution. The Ayatollah regularly leads mobs in Iran chanting death to America and death to Israel. The Ayatollah calls Israel the little Satan, calls Iran the great Satan. And I got to say, Israel is doing America an enormous favor by taking out Iran's nuclear capability. This is a highly targeted but very serious military assault where they have taken out their senior military leadership, the military leadership who would wage war. They've taken out Iranian nuclear scientists, and they've been bombing the living daylights out of nuclear facilities, degrading Iran's ability to build a nuclear war. That is very, very good for America because, let's be clear, if Iran got a nuclear weapon, there's an unacceptably high possibility Iran would use it to try to murder Americans.
Senator Ted Cruz, so appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, it is technology nothing short of remarkable, allowing a doctor to perform surgery in one location with a robot thousands of miles away, holding the scalpel over the patient.
The same as if I'm in the room. Better, actually, because I can actually see what anesthesia is doing. It's much better.
And what spectators saw at a soccer game, causing them to jump into action and save a life. Welcome back, everyone. Imagine yourself hospitalized, needing surgery, but there's no surgeon in sight. Well, one day, perhaps soon, that will no longer be a problem. This weekend, ABC News was invited to report on the very first FDA-approved human trial testing robotic telesurgery. In this case, a doctor in Orlando, Florida, removed prostate cancer from a patient nearly 7,000 miles away in the African country of Angola. ABC News medical correspondent Dr. Darian Sutton has the exclusive story.
All right, you guys can see us, we can see you. Well, here's the next step in the future of surgery.
It's a life-saving surgery this doctor has done tens of thousands of times.
It's the same as if I'm in the room. Better, actually, because I can actually see what anesthesia is doing. It's much better.
Dr. Vipul Patel is the medical director of the Global Robotic Institute at Advent Health in Orlando, Florida.
Como você está se sentindo hoje? Eu estou sentindo bem. Estou bem.
67-year-old Fernando de Silva was diagnosed with prostate cancer 3 months ago. He lives in Angola, where treatment options are limited.
Prostate cancer is very prevalent in Africa and especially Angola, but in the past they really haven't monitored it well or they haven't had treatments.
De Silva needed advanced surgical treatment to remove his prostate cancer.
This is a robotic console. It's attached to a robot, and it's attached to a robot that does surgery in patients in operating rooms all over the world.
De Silva agreed to be the first patient in an FDA clinical trial testing robotic surgery to be performed remotely.
I've done almost 20,000 robotic prostatectomies now, and that's what we're known for here.
Usually, These procedures are done with the surgeon in the room. But this time, Patel and his team were working to test whether it could be done remotely across the Atlantic Ocean in what would normally be a 14-hour flight. Unlike a typical surgery, Dr. Patel doesn't need to scrub in. Instead, he sits at a multi-million-dollar machine with a 3-dimensional screen and nimble controls with haptic feedback.
It's about an hour and 20 minutes, which is about my standard time here. So it felt the same. You know, he's a young guy. He wanted his cancer cured.
How do you communicate with your team across an ocean?
We had all the cameras in both ORs. Our team, we work so much together, it's almost telepathic. So we don't say much to each other. But our team on the ground there was speaking a lot with the local team, and we could hear them. All three are set.
It's the first robotic telesurgery from the U.S. to an international location since 2001. That procedure, famously called the Limburg operation, named after the first person who flew across the Atlantic from America to Europe.
It was a different robotic system, it was different telecom, and the procedure was successful, but it wasn't really reproduced for this whole time, 2 decades later. And the reason is the robots weren't quite compatible, the telecom was still slow, everything hadn't come together yet.
Now, with advancements in technology, engineers have been able to curtail many of the issues that can come up during a complex procedure from a distance.
How does it look? How are the images and audio, video? Perfect.
Everything great. I think we should do 5 more today.
Yeah, I mean, 11,000 kilometers away, it feels pretty good.
25 years after that Limburg operation, Dr. Patel's surgical team used a direct fiber optic network. That's a total distance of about 10,000 miles.
We're using direct fiber from Orlando to Miami, Miami down to Fortaleza in Brazil, and across the ocean to Luanda in Angola. And so you see the distance 17,000 kilometers. Throughout the procedure, it was about 140 milliseconds stable, so there was no perceptible delay in my brain.
The delay is so short that it's not noticeable by the brain.
Exactly, it's not perceptible. I always have my team where the patient is. So in case something happened with telecom, which can, I'm sure, the team would just take over and finish the case and do it safely.
The first FDA-approved remote surgery was a success.
All right, why don't you switch it over and then let's sew this back. First ever prostate removed from the United States to Africa. So at least we've done that part. Now we have to put it all back together.
And now Dr. Patel plans to do more.
In terms of the clinical trial and the FDA approval, what other steps will happen after this?
Well, I think we have to do more cases with the trial, and then we will present the data back to the FDA. I think that what they're looking for is safety and redundancy and reliability and making sure the patients did fine. And that's our interest too.
We talked about treating prostate cancer today. What are some other examples where this type of technology can be used to help people?
I think the most needs-based case would be telestroke and cardiac. Those are the two where people die quickly in a short period of time. And so if we could do remote stroke surgery, remote cardiac stenting, clot removals, you would save huge amount of lives. Emergency room physicians will have technology that can be remotely accessible to surgeons, maybe even in the ambulance, where people can get remote interventions if they can't make it to the hospital. So this is where telesurgery will really have an impact on a broader level. All right.
The implications here are far-reaching. Our thanks to Dr. Darian Sutton for that. Coming up, actors Carrie Coon and Morgan Spector are a social climbing dynamic due on HBO's The Gilded Age. They'll be here to share a few secrets with us about the show's new 3rd season. And for years, he entertained us in what some describe as a disgusting way. We'll tell you who just announced his return to Nathan's famous July 4th hot dog eating contest. Stay with us. The Trump family launches a mobile carrier service. Credit scores are taking the hit as collections restart for delinquent student loan payments. And quick-thinking parents jump into action to save the life of a soccer coach. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. President Trump's family business has launched a mobile carrier service. The Trump Organization introduced Trump Mobile Monday. The service offers what they're calling the 47 plan with unlimited talk, text, and data for $47.45 a month. The company is also planning to launch the gold-plated T1 smartphone, which will go on sale later this year for $499. A $7.4 billion settlement was reached in opioid litigation against Purdue Pharma. The settlement was agreed upon by attorneys general in all 50 states and 4 territories and bars the once prominent Sackler family from owning Purdue Pharma and making, selling, or marketing opioids. The settlement ends pending litigation against Purdue Pharma for manufacturing and marketing opioid products, which are accused of fueling the opioid crisis in the U.S. The Supreme Court will hear from a faith-based pregnancy center in New Jersey challenging a state investigation. First Choice Women's Resource Centers is trying to block a subpoena from the state's attorney general, claiming the demand in the subpoena for donor information violated its First Amendment rights. The state investigation is examining whether First Choice was misleading people about the services it provides. Millions of Americans have seen their credit scores dip as missed student loan payments are once again sent for debt collection. The Federal Bank of New York said in its first quarter of the year, more than 2.2 million loan recipients saw their scores drop by 100 points after becoming delinquent, and more than 1 million saw their scores drop at least 150 points. The Trump administration resumed collections for outstanding loans after a nearly 5-year pause. A group of spectators saved the life of a soccer coach who collapsed during a game. In a scary moment caught on camera, Southern Tier Football Club coach Andrew Pilblad collapsed on the field during the second half of a match in Wilson, New York. Video shows parents rushing to the coach's side to give CPR, and others ran into the school to grab an AED. He was hospitalized for a week and expressed his appreciation in an interview with ABC affiliate WKBW.
I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for their actions.
Competitive eating legend Joey Chestnut has announced his return to the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest. The 16-time champion missed last year's event over a dispute with Major League Eating about a sponsorship deal with the plant-based food company Impossible Foods. In his comeback announcement on social media, Chestnut said his partnerships never conflicted with his love of hot dogs and that he was excited to return to the event on Coney Island with hot dogs in hands, signing off by telling followers, "Stay hungry." In HBO's The Gilded Age, money, power, and wealth are taken to new heights as robber barons and the new industrial class battle with the old guard. At the end of the season 2, Bertha and George Russell, played by Carrie Coon and Morgan Spector, seem to have conquered New York society by getting the most important box at the opera. But in season 3, which begins this coming Sunday, the Russells' eligible daughter Gladys could take them even further with the right marriage. Let's take a look.
There's a moment when a young girl turns into a woman. It's dark and it's light. Complicated and not just pretty. With a hint of what's to come.
Carrie and Morgan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so the hardest question of all, I think, do George and Bertha really love each other? Or is this really just about power?
How dare you? I think
Can't it be both?
yes.
I think that's part of their that's part of the root of their love.
Synthesis
of goal and drive and
I
we
think
find
they
power
both
really
worship
sexy.
power. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And that brings them together.
Both. I hadn't even thought that it doesn't have to be one or the other.
No, it is a love match.
We were talking just really briefly as we were sitting here about theater, right? And both of you all have a theater background, as does much of the cast. What kind of change, or does it, does that appear in the show, would you say? Does that change the show in any way?
Absolutely. Everyone understands the purpose of an ensemble, which is that we're all telling a story together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of humility and a lot of gratitude.
There is a sense, I mean, as you've talked about, like you can't just play a kind of verite naturalism on this show. The language doesn't support it, the costumes don't support it, it asks for you to lift a little. And I think theater-trained actors know how to do that while still staying credible and grounded in a...
And they also know how to wear a corset. Sit a corset with a deep breath so you have room to breathe.
You all both mentioned the costumes, and that's something that I'm curious. Do you ever put on a costume on the show and it maybe changes the way you deliver or it makes you feel more empowered?
Absolutely.
Every day.
Yeah. The costumes, I think, are definitional.
75% of the way.
Yes.
All you have to do is get out of the way. Try not to screw up.
Right. That's right.
Let's talk about Bertha and your character. Really, this is, she represents someone, I guess, that a lot of people can relate to, but in particular to the Gilded Era. What do you think it is about her that in these contemporary times, women find her so relatable?
I just feel that Bertha represents a frustrated energy. She can't be a CEO. She can't run a company. She's not allowed. The only place she can put it is into her family, into her children, and into the sort of social, uplift.
I also think in every sphere of her life, she demands and commands respect. And she gets what she deserves, whether that's okay with anyone around her or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's it's sort of a wish.
And we can't deny there's still a double standard for female ambition.
Sure.
We can't pretend that we've dispatched with any of that.
You've put her in this position.
A position that will make her the envy of every woman living.
And to make her life a misery. Is that what you want?
When there are children, they will be among the highest ranking people on earth. Do you really want that wrecked by Billy Carlton?
I said she could marry for love.
Bertha really thrives on power and control. And we see now that she's marrying off her daughter, that might be coming into some conflict, some tension really between her maternal instincts and really continuing on with this control. Can we get a sense of how that's going to play out?
It's funny because I play Bertha and I can't judge Bertha. In my mind, Bertha is doing everything she's doing out of love. And she wants her daughter to have a fulfilling life and a long, successful marriage. And she wants her to have power and influence. And she wants her life to have meaning. And Bertha knows the world is not set up for her daughter and that she needs to protect her. And the way to do that is through marriage.
I think from the first season, it's been, there was a hint of the black high society in addition to the white high society. Now we're starting to see more of an introduction to the wealth in the black population. How does that change the tenor of the show?
I think anytime we expand into that world, I'm really proud because it's just, we haven't represented that population in this period. We certainly haven't shown these diasporas in New York specifically. And every time they get to have a big, beautiful ball and, a love story, I just think it's really important. I think that representation is really important. Not to mention gorgeous.
I also think this season we get into a little bit of the, just as there's a kind of old money, new money dynamic on the sort of white, rich white people side of the story, there is a similar dynamic on the black side of the story. And I think that to get into those nuances is also really juicy and exciting.
Want to switch gears for a moment to White Lotus. The director of Mike White, is known for bringing characters back from a prior season into the next. Do you think that it's possible your character might be making an appearance
Mike
season
White
4?
is the only person who knows that, and I have not received a phone call, so we'll see.
And what about the future? Can we expect another season of the Gilded Age?
If everybody watches it
Okay.
on the
Clap
day
your
that
hands,
it's on.
Tinkerbell won't
Yes,
die.
write a letter. Yeah. We would love to come back. There's a lot of story to tell after this season, and I think the reviews have been really fun and exciting, and we really love each other, and we love telling the story.
Yeah.
The power also, right? You love each other and you love the power as well. But we love having you on. Thank you both so much. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Again, season 3 of The Gilded Age premieres on HBO's Max this Sunday, June 22nd. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.